Yes, people, welcome back to Lee Judges TV for another episode of Albert's Talking Points. It's been a while, people, but before we get into it, let's smash the intro. Yes, people, welcome back, as I said before, to Lee Judges TV. Albert's Talking Points is back after a small hiatus, but it's good to be back. New season 22-23, Arsenal recruitment, possibly still more to come. It's been a bright start to the season, people. But let's get the normalities out of the way. People, obliterate the like button straight away and get them algorithms up to the channel. Thank you again, once again, to Lee Judges. I think he's on holiday at the moment, actually. But yeah, thanks for the opportunity, my dear friend. And yeah, much appreciated. But yes, people, as you can see, big up to the people in the chat already. Thank you for gracing us with your presence on this Tuesday night. There's 18 of you in the chat already, I think. Yeah. But I've got my brother from another mother. It's been too long. Finally got to meet Rohan last season at the Man United game, which was on St. George's Day. So it was a pleasure to meet my long-lost brother that I never knew I had. Well, Rohan, how you been, man? Long time. Welcome back to Lee Judges TV, man.
Yeah, good, man. Yeah, same old, just standard day-to-day, work, and then just looking at all things Arsenal when I always come back from work. And yeah, buzzing to be on again. Was always good to meet you last season. Yeah, it was against United, wasn't it?
Yes,
Saturday lunchtime
game.
Oh, that was a great day as well. After that Granit Xhaka long range screamer as well. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
No, brother. Listen, I always put the call out to you, man. When I want to do these shows, it's I think I said we've got 9 days left. My maths is not the best, people. So I believe it's either 9 or 10 days left of the transfer window. I believe it's 10, but guys, you know what I mean, isn't it? It's a slight error, but yeah, Rohan. So we're going to do this in reverse order in terms of talking about transfer rumors, links, all things Arsenal, whatever way you want to phrase it. So I'm going to start with sort of the players the names that have been thrown around quite a bit in from what I've seen personally, whether that be through whatever news media outlet you choose to believe, or in some cases not to believe. But yeah, the first one I'm going to come straight away to you, my bro, is the possible links with Arsenal bringing another winger in Pedro Neto. Before I come to you, my initial thoughts about the link was, let me get to the petrol station, fill up the tank in my car, and drive all the way to the Midlands ASAP and bring this man to the Emirates. Love what I've seen so far of his time in England. So I know it's going to be a tricky deal to get done. I think there's a lot of depending factors. If we can move on Nicolas Pepe on loan for a season. Pedro Neto, 22, joined Wolves in 2019, signed a 5-year contract. So he should be within the last 2 years, Rohan, if that's right off the top of my head. 76 appearances and 9 goals. 3 caps for the senior Portuguese team, which he's got those in 2020. But yeah, what's your sort of thoughts, mate, in terms of the links with Pedro Neto, and what's your immediate feelings in terms of, is that someone we should be definitely looking at, whether regardless of price range or not?
Yeah, just like you, buzzing with that link. Absolutely buzzing. I think, for me, a winger is an absolute must for Arsenal. I think when you look at the way that we play at the moment, the dynamics and how we utilize our wingers, we had Emil Smith-Rowe playing on the left a lot last season. But I'd say when we got to that December period, we made tweaks to the system. We had Xhaka, surprisingly playing a little bit higher up, and we had Tierney a lot deeper, as opposed to, previously under Mikel Arteta's reign, we predominantly had, Tierney acting as that wide outlet who was just really high up, and he was tasked with giving crosses. And that meant that the left winger was more inside. He was a lot more as a playmaker, which suited Emil Smith-Rowe. But then when we made those tweaks, we utilised Gabriel Martinelli a lot more, because we had to have someone who was operating on the touchline. We have Bukayo Saka on one touchline on the right, and we have someone on the opposite flank in Gabriel Martinelli. And these guys have to be very good in 1v1s. They have to have a good first touch, and they have to be explosive. And you look at the players that we have, it's all about increasing the competition, increasing the depth of the squad. That is an absolute must, but also to bring in players who are going to give you the opportunity to not make wholesale changes. We saw last season when we had specific injuries how it kind of disrupted the squad. This season it is very important, which we've already done with the signings that we've made, which we'll probably discuss later anyway, how we've had to increase that competition, increase the floor of the squad, but also the ceiling. I think Pedro Neto is someone that we absolutely need. You look at Bukayo Saka, and we know he is, Arsenal's talisman, and, a star boy with his nickname. And but one thing that I worry about is the amount of games that he does play. He's only 20 years of age and he's played 100 games. Now, you can't obviously completely compare players with past players, but you can definitely make the point. Wayne Rooney, when he was very young, he was running to the ground from the get-go, a fabulous talent, but his career didn't have that longevity because he played so many minutes during the start of his reign. Now, you could obviously put his diet into it, and Bukayo Saka's diet is going to be a lot better with the nutritionists and, how advanced the game is on that front, but he needs to be given the opportunity to be managed a little bit better, and he can be rested in certain games. And Pedro Neto will not only compete with Bukayo Saka, but he will give him the opportunity to have games where he doesn't need to play, but also he gives you that quality on the left. And I think for me, it is vital that we get a winger. And Pedro Neto, when I look at the style of winger that Mikel Arteta likes, he likes these wingers who are very much capable in 1v1s. They're explosive. They can create chances from themselves. Pedro Neto can do that. There's obviously been a lot of kind of concerns about the injury that he picked up and how it's affected him. But for me, when I've watched him, it's not really been much of a problem. He's still very much explosive. I don't think he's lost that edge in his game. Someone who's still very young, still has a lot to give, in terms of his ceiling. And I think when you look at actually Mikel Arteta, one of his biggest strengths is how he's able to take wingers to the next level. He did it with Leroy Sané and Raheem Sterling. They spoke really highly of him in terms of how he was able to tweak the game and make slight adjustments that took them to the next level. Martinelli has been, for me, alongside Eddie Nketiah, as one of our most improved players over the last year. Bukayo Saka, we know how good he is. Pedro Neto in this Arsenal team, I think, can really explode. And it's obviously a case of the fee, how much Wolves will demand. We've seen Anthony Gordon, the money needed to get him, which is ridiculous. And that could set a really bad precedent if, that deal goes through. Then, Wolves could be looking at it and thinking, well, Pedro Neto is a much better player than Anthony Gordon, despite the fact Gordon, I think, is a good player, but not for the fee that's quoted. Pedro Neto, and from Wolves' perspective, could arguably could say that he's worth a lot more than that. But I think with Arsenal, the advantage that we potentially do have with this is Mendes acting as that broker. He did it with the Fabio Vieira deal. His release clause was much higher than the actual fee that we managed to get him for. So he could really help us in that regard. And hopefully, we do manage to strike a deal, because I think it's absolutely necessary, and it's another signing that would really raise both the ceiling, but also push, the floor of the team as well.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the money they're talking about, which is obviously rumored, people in the chat watching now, is 50 million. Yeah. 22 years old, Rowan. So, listen. Firstly, it's not my money, so I couldn't care less if we paid that or we got him for a little bit less or a little bit more. Like you said, he hasn't reached his ceiling yet. From what I've seen of his time in England, very impressive. You mentioned before, got the long-term injury. I think it was it the season before last, was it, or last season? I can't remember now.
It was. I think it was. Yeah, the season before last. I think it was April 2021, and then he came back in around about February. And it took him a little bit of time to get up to the speed of things, but obviously, that it's going to, with a long-term injury. But I'm all for this deal, just like you.
Yeah, 100%, man. Listen, like I said, man, the car's ready to bring this guy to the Emirates, man. And I guess it depends really, Rowan, as well. I said that, I think, probably a few weeks ago, I said it in terms of people asked the question, how many realistic signings do I think Arsenal could make before the end of the window? I said 1. 2 would be a push, I think. But if you're going to make it happen, and I think in the areas you're talking about in terms of another wide player, and most definitely centrally, 100%, then I think it's not a case of it is a case of can Arsenal make it happen, but I think they need to make it happen. Even with already the recruitment they've already done. And also you have to factor in as well the players that are going to be moved on. Whether we get a good monetary value for the guys that are going to go is another question with Arsenal, because unfortunately we haven't sold well to get a good monetary value back into the club, which is a shame. But that needs to improve over sort of years to come. So no, good shout, Ram. Listen, that's one guy. We'll keep an eye on it. Sort of like I said, 9-10 days left, so we'll see. But the next player, I was going to mention this guy, but I'll leave him till last actually, because he's very prominent in the Arsenal fans' minds. But another link has been obviously for a few weeks now is Lucas Paqueta from Lyon, 24 years old, 33 caps for the national team, 7 goals. Lyon presence from 2020, 67 appearances, 7 goals, and before that had spells at AC Milan and is it Flamenco? I believe it was before that. I believe, yeah. So yeah, Ro, what do you make of the links of Paqueta? Before you answer that, just say for argument's sake, this was a viable transfer lead or link. I think in a good way, it brings more depth to the team. But I look at it and think, well, if you're going to obtain a guy's quality of a guy like Lucas Paqueta, then surely he would be somebody that comes straight into the first team, right?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I don't know, loads about Lucas Paqueta, but I think, we saw the links kind of surface a few weeks ago now. It's kind of died down a little bit. But it's very much a player that, I think Fabrizio Romano stated that, he's someone who Edu really likes and Arteta also likes as well, and a player who perhaps, although probably it's not likely that we'll go for him in this window, maybe in a future window we could potentially go in for that, because I think the fee reported for him, is I think upwards of like 70 or 80 million that they were looking for. I think, when I went back to that point, in terms of the tweaks in the system and how we've seen Xhaka move a lot higher up the pitch predominantly, he obviously still is tasked with that ability in deeper areas to help us in build up, but it's Zinchenko's responsibility a lot more now. We've seen him tuck inside with Thomas Partey a lot, and you have to be flexible. But although I'm a massive fan of Grant Xhaka, I take pelters for defending him. There's the argument that someone of Lucas Paqueta in those spaces higher up between the lines would be a lot suited to Arsenal instead of the Granit Xhaka. That is the argument against, someone like me who's a massive advocate for that player. And I think Lucas Paqueta, I saw his, his numbers. He was pretty productive last season, but also gives us a lot of versatility. And, I think Mikel Arteta spoke about how we need to increase the goals in the team. You need more reliable outputters. And he's someone who on paper would give us that and that bit of incisiveness in advanced areas, more goal threat. And he certainly fits the ball in that regard. Do I think it's a signing that's really necessary right now for the fee quoted? Probably not, because I think, the other player that we're going to obviously talk about perhaps is a lot more attainable. And again, someone we're going to talk about, but someone who I've never been too keen on, but I've kind of been more open-minded about that situation because of the fee. But yeah, in terms of Lucas Paqueta, he's obviously a very talented player. He's played in a lot of different positions. I think he's played, as a false 9, he's played on the flanks, he's played both sides of midfield. So he gives us a lot of versatility, and that is something that is very much needed in this Arteta team. He talks about unpredictability a lot. He talks about rotations and interchanges, and someone like Lucas Paqueta would potentially give you that. But whether that is a deal that is feasible right now, given the fact that we are very much looking for that wide man, and Pedro Neto is reportedly going to be around that 50 million mark, it's looking unlikely that we'd be going for him. But maybe in a future window, perhaps in January or even next summer, we could go back in for that specific player.
That's a good point, because I think if I got it right, I don't know if you correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan. I think he signed a 5-year contract in 2020. So come this season, he'll be down. After this season, he'll be down to his last couple of years.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
Do you want to pay that? So technically, really speaking, he's got 3 years left on his contract, including this season. So that's I can't see that personally happening or developing. But from what I've seen and heard from other people that probably watch him, not probably do watch him a lot more than I've seen him, then they wax lyrical, should I say, about him. But no, good take, Ryan, man, seriously. But the last player we're going to talk about, he's been talked about a lot. Even when I was at what's funny? I was at the game against Leicester, where I was absolutely cooking to death. It was hot, man. Oh my god. Yuri Tielemans, when he got taken off as a substitute, the Arsenal fans at the dugout gave this guy a tremendous reception, man. And they were singing songs. I think you'll be here next week and the rest of it. But if you see my thoughts about him, Rowan, I've been quite clear, really. I mean, I don't sometimes understand with sections of our fan base. You want better. You've got players that are playing within the league that you've seen week in, week out, year in, year out. And for me personally, with Yuri Tielemans, like I said, I'd drive in the car and bring him to Arsenal tomorrow. I don't see a downside of it. Is there pros and cons of most footballers? Yeah, there is. That's not uncommon. Defenders, strikers, there's always pros and cons that comes with being a footballer and being linked with transfer talk, you understand? But I think for me, Tielemans, I think the thing for me, Rome, last year of his contract, it's listen, I don't know anybody who's got connections with Leicester, but it's not a secret that he's not looking to stay there. And I think that as there's mentioned today, Rowan, in terms of the money potentially Leicester would want for him is probably going to be slashed in terms of the 38 million bounty they put on his head. So maybe Arsenal or other potential suitors. I've heard rumours about Liverpool being last minute. They're talking about probably you can get him for 20 million. Arsenal should be all over that. They should be. If it gets to a point where you get a feeling the players doesn't want to come to the club, you move on. No problem. I can get over Yuri Tielemans not coming to Arsenal. It doesn't, you want players that want to be here first and foremost. But yeah, bro, what's your thoughts in terms of the Tielemans deal? There's so much that you hear about it.
Yeah, do you know what? At the start, I was very much against this deal. I was kind of in that minority. And I think I remember I told you about this before. I wasn't too keen on him, but I think it's very important to be open-minded and to look at every specific situation. And I think with Yuri Tielemans, the reason why I'm kind of drawn into it is because you look at the fee needed to acquire him. It's a steal, really, isn't it? When you look at the market, you look at the sums of money that teams are spending for different players. A player like Yuri Tielemans, who we saw him at a very early age for Anderlecht when he played against us in the Champions League, and he was only 17 at that time, and I remember we beat them 2-1 at their ground, and it was a 3-3 at our ground, and he stood out, with I think it was Dennis Pratt at the time as well, two players who ironically are both at Leicester now. But I think with Yuri Tielemans, I'll go back to the point that I made about Granit Xhaka and how he's higher up, and I think he has been consistent since we've made this switch. But you have to also ask the question, are there players out there who perhaps are going to give us better quality in advanced areas? Absolutely. And I think with Yuri Tielemans, he's a lot more press resistant. He's a lot more, agile in these spaces. And he's going to give us a lot more creativity for sure, because he's going to be quicker in these situations because he's more mobile than a Granit Xhaka in those type spaces. And that's where, I've got a massive, I love Granit Xhaka, and but I think you have to also look at his weaknesses. You have to look at the strengths of other players, and I think Yuri Tielemans would give us more than Granit Xhaka in that regard. I think with Tielemans, the issues have been for me is that off the ball there have been deficiencies with him. In terms of he does lunge into tackles a lot. We give Granit Xhaka a lot of stick in terms of how he has had the tendency over the years to dive into challenges. Yuri Tielemans is that kind of a player, but I go back to what Mikel Arteta has done since he came to Arsenal. He's implemented a structure. I think regardless of your opinions on the coach, I think that is something that we can all agree on in terms of he has made Arsenal stable, and he's allowed players like Granit Xhaka, the weaknesses that those types of players have are mitigated. So if the weaknesses of Granit Xhaka are mitigated, then a player like Yuri Tielemans off the ball deficiencies at times over large distances would also be mitigated, because in this Arsenal team, players aren't tasked to run large distances in isolation. They are very much surrounded by other players within close proximity, and therefore the off the ball work is shared. And you wouldn't be exposing a player into Tielemans who wouldn't be able to deal with players, tricky wingers in 1v1 scenarios, and also ball carriers. So I think for me, when you look at the money needed to acquire him, like you said, it is a no-brainer. But also, I was thinking about it a couple of weeks ago, and the biggest worry that I do have with this Arsenal team still is if Thomas Partey becomes unavailable, then I really do worry about what we do, because we saw it last season in terms of, you look at Arsenal's performances and results from December all the way to March when we made this
Yeah,
fix the system. We were competing with the likes of Manchester City and Liverpool in terms of points per game, but also the amount of goals we scored. We were showing an increase amount of, better creativity, better goal output, but also chances created. The moment Thomas Partey got injured, but also there were other players as well, Kieran Tierney becoming unavailable,
yeah,
Tomiyasu's
massive.
issues, around about that game against Leeds away from home back in December. But we were able to kind of deal with that with Cedric coming in, who, I'm not a massive fan of, but I thought did an okay job. Partey became unavailable after that, and we saw us, struggle in his absence in certain games. We lost against, Brighton and Southampton in succession, and we also kind of suffered against both Spurs and, Newcastle. Elneny is given a new contract, right? And I've kind of voiced my opinion on this, and that I didn't agree with it
No,
personally.
I didn't either.
As much as I admire Mo, I admire his attitude and obviously the dressing room influence, and he did have some very good games for sure, in Thomas Partey's absence. But I look at what we did in the absence of Thomas Partey. We had to change a lot of the dynamics, and we kind of suffered. We weren't able to develop that consistency that we showed from December all the way to March in Mo Elneny's presence. I think with Tielemans, we talk about his off-the-ball deficiencies, and they are there, and that is the question mark you would have. But I think with Mo Elneny, what he's really good at is in build-up. He takes up good positions and he recycles play.
Yeah,
But in the absence of Thomas Partey, we lost that ability to progress the ball forward, those line breakers. Yuri Tielemans, I think, would be able to do that a lot better than a Mo Elneny in that specific role. So I think he would give us that option as a number 6 as well. Although you'd obviously worry about his, because it's off the ball work. But again, the system is a lot more tighter. It's a lot more compact. That would be able to kind of mitigate that. So I think he would give us more quality than a Mo Elneny. So for me, he's a player who not only compete with Ødegaard and Vieira for that right half space position, because Tielemans, for his most part of his career at Leicester, has been playing on the right, as opposed to the left, which is where we envisaged him playing. But he'd give us that right half space quality. He'd obviously be moulded into that player who's going to be operating on the left to compete with a Granit Xhaka if he came to the club. But he'd also give us an option of a number 6 as well. So he fills multiple holes within the team, and for a cup price as well. So for me, I've very much grown towards this. I think Arsenal hold the cards unless a new club comes in from, let's say, a Liverpool who do need a midfielder. You could obviously say that he perhaps isn't a Jurgen Klopp style player, but I think Jurgen Klopp does need to evolve now with Darwin Núñez coming into the team, and I think they're going more that Dortmund mold that he had with the likes of Lewandowski. But for me, Yuri Tielemans would fit into multiple positions. He'd give us depth. He'd give us quality if he was playing week in, week out as well. And like I said, for the fee, it is pretty much a steal. And I think this is one that will perhaps happen a lot closer to deadline day, because, like I said, Arsenal hold the cards. They don't need to go in now and say, right, I'll pay what you want. The longer it drags on, I think the more Leicester will be willing to kind of, push their price downwards, because they do want to get rid of him. I'm near the Leicester area. I'm around Leicester fans, and that is pretty much the way the club stands. He didn't start the game against Southampton the weekend. He came off the bench, but that kind of shows that, Leicester are willing to kind of move him on.
No, you make some good points. It's a weird one, because I always use the keyword sections, man. Like, so if you as an Arsenal fan are happy for Elneny to stay at the club, but you have reservations about a Tielemans, for example, I don't get that, because you're bringing somebody that would improve, to me, the squad depth and the team. I've seen people say in the chat, I've seen people say it in plenty of other YouTube live streams where they say, oh, he's not good enough, and he's, I don't think he'd improve us and defensively. But what I say to that is, Rowan, is the fact that, okay, from a realistic point of view, in terms of Arsenal bringing players in, get over the whole marquee signing thing that was dangling around Arsenal fans' heads for the last 5 or 6 years, because it wasn't going to happen. Arsenal were not progressing in that way for us to attract those type of players. This is not a Sanchez time. It's not an Ozil time. Them days are gone. So you have to look at the next tier in terms of who realistically Arsenal can bring in. And as you mentioned and said before, like, you've got a player who's 25, has been in the Premier League for about 4 years, I believe it is, or more. Experience, he's played week in, week out. Like I said, if you don't think he's the answer as a fan, then I want to know what your other alternatives are with 9-10 days to go. You made a good point. I'll bring you in again, Rowan. Like,
That's it. You know,
you
I
go,
think
bro. Go on, come in.
yeah, you make a really good point. You know, like I said at the start, I was kind of looking at it and thinking, you know, I'm not too keen on this. But again, like I said, you have to be open minded. You have to look at the alternatives. You know, I spoke about, you know, how obviously Yuri Tielemans is going to be playing a lot higher up, but he gives you that Thomas Partey potential backup option. But some dogs just going absolutely crazy outside of you. um, but yeah, what was it? Yeah, like for example, you know, I'm worried about the Thomas Partey situation, but you know, you look at the alternatives out there. There aren't really many number sixes out there who are really attainable, and you know, Yuri Tielemans is someone, like I said, who could fit that potential, you know, backup option. Yes, he may not be the ideal solution, but I think he'd give you more quality than a Mohamed El Neni, and that is what's important. And then, you know, like I said already a number of times, the money needed to acquire him is pretty much peanuts when you consider that he is a Belgium international. He's been playing, you know, week in, week out in a Leicester team that has been very dysfunctional, you
No,
know, over the past
absolutely.
year and a
Yeah.
half. So, you know, I see a lot more positives than negatives with it, and that's the way I stand on it. And I'm very much, you know, on board with this.
You make a good point, and again, you mentioned something earlier. I mean, I'll be honest with you, Rowan. I know with Granit Xhaka, he splits a lot of opinion. Well, more or less since his time he's been at Arsenal, to be honest, more the last 2 or 3 years. But and with me, for people that have seen my opinion of this guy since he's been at Arsenal, when he plays well, I praise him. I don't go overboard. If he shows ill discipline or he gets a booking or he gets sent off, I don't go in too hard on him because he's been in long enough for me to know what to expect from him. And for me, there's still aspects of him I don't trust him, Rowan. And if you add that on top of the fact that he mentioned about Thomas Partey and the injury record and us trying to keep him fit for the season, it just takes one player to be at this team for a certain amount of time, particularly in those key areas of a central position where they add a bit more defensive stability. That's going to be a problem. So that's why I say if people have a slight issue with the links with Tielemans, then who else would you look at to come in?
Yeah, exactly. I agree. You know, like I said, it's for me. You know, we've done a lot of really good business. I think since Arteta's taken over as full manager, I've liked what him and Edu have done. You know, as a partnership together in terms of recruitment, and I like how we've strengthened multiple areas. And like I said, we've not only raised the ceiling of the team with obviously the likes of Gabriel Jesus, but we've also raised the floor of the squad, which is very important because last season when we had a couple of injuries, the dynamics changed, and you saw the drop off in quality, and you saw how that had an adverse effect on both the performances, but also the results obtained towards the business end of the season. And you know, that's what it's about. It's about making sure that you are in a position where if you lose certain key players in the current starting 11, how are you able to mitigate that? And you're able to mitigate that by bringing in players with quality. And you know, Tielemans, like I said, you know, I think would be a very good option for us, especially for the money needed to acquire his services.
No, well said. Big up to you. People in the chat, thank you for gracing us with your presence. Thanks for your comments in the chat. 60 of you watching. As you can see, people, my Twitter handle and my fantastic brother from another mother's Twitter handle is in our boxes and going along the bottom of the screen. And as I know many of you can do, multitask and follow both on the Twitter platform, people. Engage with the Arsenal community, as they say. But yeah, sort of around fast forwarding on to links to who we have. I kind of focusing on 2 players in particular. Great to get your thoughts on them, actually, because the much I like having Twitter conversation with your brother, it's not the same when I get you on a live stream. so yeah, it's let's start with Zinchenko, actually. I said this before, when there come obviously disappointment of the end of last season and not making the Champions League spots and thinking about Arsenal's summer recruitment and who he's going to bring in. He's not someone I actually even batted an eyelid or even possibly even thought he'd be coming to Arsenal. So yeah, when the links sort of first came around, I was like, you know what? I'm not against it, you know. That's my initial thought because he's a very intelligent and articulate footballer. You know, playing at left back for City but for the national team he plays obviously in a bit more of a further advanced role. So he's very comfortable on the ball and he's very good at getting into those areas of space where from an attacking point of view, he's very beneficial, and in terms of adaptability and flexibility. So I was kind of on board with that. So yeah, what was your initial thoughts of the link with Zinchenko? And on top of that, what have you made of what you've seen? Not just obviously in the preseason, but in terms of what you've seen in the sort of the first 3 games. What's he brought to Arsenal that you feel has been very beneficial?
Do you know what? If you follow me, I've been like praising Zinchenko for like a number of years now. I really like him. I think I don't want to give out any spoilers on All or Nothing because obviously people aren't gonna. Maybe not everyone has seen it, but I think we saw very much the the youth of this squad throughout the episodes. That's all I'll say. But in terms of Zinchenko, I look at Manchester City and what they've done in the Pep Guardiola, and once he leaves that club, it will go down as one of the most successful periods in the Premier League at one specific club. And the amount of Premier League titles that they've managed to acquire, the FA Cups, the League Cups as well, the competition in all competitions that they've managed to be able to compete in, they've been so consistent. And Zinchenko, similarly to the player that we're probably going to be talking about in a bit as well,
Yes.
someone who has never been a starter for Manchester City. There aren't many instances where he has played 7 or 8 games in a row. I can't think of many. I reckon there probably hasn't ever been a situation where he has been able to build momentum and start games week in, week out for City. But what you have with this player, and Pep Guardiola said it, is that he is so tactically flexible, and he's been able to come on for that City team, regardless of the situation. Whenever Pep, calls for his services to do something in a game, a specific tactical instruction, he's able to execute it. He's consistent, and you go all the way back to Man City's, title-winning final day last season against Aston Villa, where they struggled in the first half. Obviously, Ilkay Gundogan got a lot of the praise, and rightly so. And other players as well, like Raheem Sterling, who came on and made a difference. But Zinchenko came on at half-time as well. And if you watch that game back, obviously, we were watching Arsenal versus Everton, pretty much a dead rubber game at that time. But I watched that game back because it was incredible in terms of how it all kind of turned out. Zinchenko came on and he made a difference because he was given a role where he was, Pep went with pretty much 2 right footers on the left, and it didn't work. The balance wasn't there. He brought on Zinchenko. He tasked him to hold the width, tasked him to give quality in advanced areas. Something that you don't really see a lot from him because he's more of that controller and that guy who sits a little bit deeper, which is what we've seen with him at Arsenal predominantly so far. But he was able to do that role, and it was massive for Man City in terms of them actually winning that title. And that's why I go back to the point in terms of a player who is so tactically flexible, a player who Pep has been able to call upon his service in different situations, and he's always been able to deliver. And I think, you go back to last season, we talked about Thomas Partey and the injury that he sustained against Crystal Palace. But the other player who we have lost in key periods of the season, 2 years in a row now, is Kieran Tierney. And it has been a massive problem for Arsenal because as much as I love him, and I don't think he is as injury prone as what is made out to be, and I've been speaking to Dr. Raj about it, and he obviously is a lot more clued upon, that side of football. And it's not a case of Tierney is always injured. It's a case of Tierney's been sustaining injuries in key periods. He got an injury against that period where we played Villarreal 2 seasons ago, and it had a massive impact on our season in the end because Tierney was massive for us in terms of creativity and final third output. In his absence, we didn't have a natural left back, and we suffered. Last season, Kieran Tierney becomes unavailable and sustains an injury. Nuno Tavares comes in, and clearly the manager didn't have the confidence in Nuno Tavares to deliver. So it was absolutely vital that Arsenal were able to bring in a player who could not only compete with Kieran Tierney, but could also displace him. And, Zinchenko has came into the team, and he's given a different element. He's given us that quality on the ball. He is so technically sound. It's incredible. I remember, I think Carl Walker did that interview in terms of his top 3, technically most gifted players in the team. In the Man City team. And Zinchenko was up there, in his top 3. And that just tells you how good this guy is on the ball and the quality that he's given us. He's been able to control the game. He's been massive in terms of the left-hand side fluidity that we've seen, the interchanges. We've seen Gabriel Martinelli thrive. But Zinchenko, along with Granit Xhaka as well, but Zinchenko in particular has allowed for that to happen because of his ability to control the game, know when to slow it down, know when to speed it up, the passes that he delivers. And he's been fantastic in the first 3 games. And I think this is a signing that was very much needed because I went back to the point, in terms of how young this Arsenal team is. it's very much the right way. You'll see Manchester United do exactly the same thing in terms of how Arsenal have built the squad. It's taken a lot of pain. We obviously haven't perhaps achieved the outcomes at the end of the season that we would have liked, but the process, the way that we've built the squad is very much right. But then it's all about adding experience, but not, 30 to 31, 32-year-olds, but experienced players who've been playing at the top level, have a lot of experience under their belt at around about 24, 25. And Zinchenko suits that. He has been a massive player for us. He's going to give us a lot of quality. I think he's going to be a key player in terms of in those games last season where we struggled away from home in hostile atmospheres, where the players just became overwhelmed with the situation. We go back to Newcastle. That wasn't a tactical disaster. That was players just struggling to handle the pressure. And a player like Zinchenko, who's been there and he's done it, I think is massive for Arsenal. We've obviously seen the impact that he's had in the first 3 games. We've obviously seen, what he's going to be able to give us in terms of on the ball, something that Kieran Tierney won't be able to give us that same level of quality. And we now have 2 different players who effectively, we aren't worried now if Kieran Tierney gets an injury. We aren't worried now if Zinchenko gets an injury because we've got 2 top players. And I'd argue outside of centre-back, that is probably the position that in terms of numbers and quality and depth, we are probably at our best. So yeah, I'm so happy with him. And for the money that's needed to have got him, 35 million, that's the total package that it will eventually reach. Look at Lisandro Martinez and the money Manchester United needed to get him. Martinez obviously was our first choice to come at left back. It's an absolute steal, and again, a massive signing for us, and I think is going to have a huge impact on the season.
Yeah, for me, he kind of similarly does. I don't know if you agree or not. If you look at how Cancelo's used in the Man City side, for me, it's exactly the same. I know it's a thing of I've seen it sort of on the social medias in terms of maybe other football fans, rival football fans, or other Arsenal fans. Oh, don't get carried away. Don't be gassing up this player. But I just think, is it really gassing up the player, or is it a case of I'm big on this, Rowan. I always stand by this. I don't care what anyone tells me. I'm not sure in terms of some Arsenal fans how much football they watch outside of watching Arsenal, whether that's within the league or in other European leagues. Because I mean, from what I've seen in Zinchenko, like I said, he plays a different role for the national team as he did when he played at Man City. And all this, if a certain player can't command the first team place in the first 11, are they really that good, or are we getting cast-offs? Let's be serious, isn't it? Like, Man City's not an average team. They haven't got choir boys in the team. Like they got quite good strength in depth. It doesn't mean you're not a good player because you couldn't command a first team place. To me, that's complete nonsense. With Zinchenko, what he does very well, Rowan, is because of his ability to be comfortable in the ball and get into advanced areas of the pitch. And I always say this with Gabriel, he's not just a rough and tumble centre half. He's actually a lot better on the ball than you think he is. And with Zinchenko in the team, he gives more of a license for the likes of Gabriel to push on a bit more forward, and maybe Saliba as well, but particularly on that side of the pitch, because obviously, Gabriel's a left-sided centre back, and then it gives Xhaka the license to have his newfound role, Xhaka Francesco Totti. I don't know what's happened to him, but yeah, he's very good at opening up spaces and giving the opposition team something to think about from a defensive point of view. So he's been very, very good at that, Zinchenko. What I would say though, I said this on the post-game one, same old Arsenal. Very gifted footballer, very technically good, but don't take liberties in your defensive final third of the pitch.
Yeah.
Couple times on Saturday, he got caught out because you're trying to be a little bit too cute.
Yeah. Do you know what? I was gonna make the point about his weaknesses, and obviously, if he didn't have any weaknesses, he'd be the best player in the world. But Zinchenko is very much a player who does have deficiencies without the ball. We've already seen it. We saw it against Crystal Palace, where if you look at that second half, he was fantastic.
100%.
I think in that first 35 minutes where we saw Arsenal play really good football, Zinchenko was at the forefront of that and the way he dictated the game. But when the game state slightly altered and when the Palace fans started to get a lot more louder because we had a couple of nervy moments with, I think it was Ben White, but also Ramsdale had a couple of moments, it then started to swing in more their favour. And what they were doing is they were targeting that long long ball over the top because we were trying to press. We're trying to steal the ball in advanced areas. And obviously, when you have that approach, and something that we do under Mikel Arteta, you are going to leave space in behind. And we were struggling with Zinchenko in terms of that out ball with Jordan Ayew, and we were struggling a lot with it. And you know, I was calling for him to make the change quicker because we needed Kieran Tierney, who is a player who is a lot more assured without the ball. You know, and this is what I really like about the sign, because we have two players who complement each other. The deficiencies that Zinchenko has, Kieran Tierney thrives in, and some of the best qualities that Kieran Tierney has, Zinchenko doesn't have. So it's very much two players who we effectively, if you molded them together, you'd have the complete fullback, really. That's what I'd like Mikel Arteta to do a little bit more. You know, I think it's very early days, but obviously we have the 5 substitutes rule now in play. We have a much better squad. We saw the bench that we had available. You have now the opportunity to make substitutes a lot more. You have the opportunity to add fresh legs to allow us to control certain situations better. And I think, you know, I'll go back to that Palace game. Zinchenko was really struggling in that second half without the ball.
Big time.
When you saw Kieran Tierney come on, we're a lot more sure. You know, Kieran Tierney made a vital header in added time. If you remember in that game, we were 2-0 up. I think it was a free header Mateta was going to have. You know, he gives you that quality. I think there was a statistic that came out last season in terms of fullbacks in the division and, you know, against wide players. Kieran Tierney was only dribbled past once. He was the best by a country mile. You know, that's the quality that he gives you. So Tierney very much, you know, in those games, I would say in the bigger games for sure, he has to be a starter ahead of Zinchenko because he's going to give you a lot more stability without the ball. But very much, it's a very good position to be in. You know, I think that sometimes as Arsenal fans, I think, you know, sometimes when we're linked with a player, you know, it's a case of, you know, but what happens to X player? What happens to this player? No, that doesn't matter. When you're a top club, you have to have quality competition in multiple positions. You know, if you don't get attached to players, then you don't worry about those things. So, you know,
and that's the thing. That's the thing. Very key point. Sentiment I don't have. I did many years ago of Wrighty and Casey and all that. Listen, different times, man. But yeah, good shout, Ryan. Good shout. Final point we're going to talk about. Big up to the people in the chat, as I say. Obliterate the like button. ATV watching, thank you, man. And follow me and Rowan on our Twitter handles going along the bottom of the screen. I left this player till last for obvious reasons. Let me chuck some. You probably know some of these stats, but I only kind of came across them sort of earlier today. But Gabriel Jesus. Now, how can I start this, Rowan? So for me, again, when I come back to links, that players that are linked with Arsenal, for me, this was a no-brainer. An absolute no-brainer. I thought if we could make it happen, absolutely make it happen. If you speak to a lot of City fans, I know one in particular said Pep used to pick him in the big games. Fantastic from the front in terms of pressing. He can finish. I don't care, regardless of what anybody tells me. From the games I've seen him play in the last 4 or 5 years he's been in this country, this boy knows how to finish. The only difference is that when he was at City, he wasn't the main man. So he wasn't going to play those runner games as a number 9, and the way City have possession of the ball, and that wasn't the case with him. When he first came to City, listen, he dislodged Aguero. Pep picked him. But like I said, when the links happened, I was like, we need to get this guy on board 100%. I couldn't personally understand, the reservations that Arsenal fans would have had, considering what we didn't do from scoring goals last season, from a striking point of view, by the way. And yeah, Rowan, for me, one thing for me, people know me in terms of my content and when I talk about football, one thing I always kind of hone in on mostly is strikers. That's my thing. That's my baby personally. One thing that used to frustrate me with Arsenal when watching them is I used to watch front threes in the Premier League. Fluidity, adaptability, flexible, great movement, things I didn't associate with any of the Arsenal front three. Whoever it was, Uber, Laka, Pepe, Chucky Martinelli when he was in and out. To me, I just didn't see any fluidity with Arsenal's front three or attacking final third. I didn't, for me personally, even for the goals we scored. But with this guy, I'll give you an example, Ron. Like the first goal against Bournemouth, he brought so many different facets, Jesus, within the space of about 10, 15 seconds. Aggression, press, get on the front foot, assist craft to Martinelli, who had the shot blocked, and it came to Erdegaard. If you just look at that, for me, as someone who loves the strikers, and to me, that was like a dream run to watch that. You know, he's the work rate of a Lacazette and the finishing ability of an Aubameyang combined, rolled into one. I've not seen that in a long time in an Arsenal shirt, if I'm being honest with you. And that's not, let me make this clear, that's not based on just what I've seen this season. I'm going by what I've seen with Jesus in his time in England. And obviously more so now because he's the main man at Arsenal to lead the front line. Ryan, before I come to you, so yeah, I saw a few things, had more touches in the opposition box than any other player in the Premier League so far, 26, 15 touches in the penalty area against Leicester when we played them, the most by an Arsenal player in 7 years, 9 take-ons, more than any other Premier League player, and 4 direct goal involvements. First Arsenal player to do that since Sanchez hat-trick and assist against West Ham in 2016. So coming to you, mate. The floor is yours.
Oh, mate, just like Zinchenko, like this guy, you know, I've loved him, you know, throughout his time at City. He's honestly different class. You know, I've never understood the criticism of him.
No.
You know, I've never understood it. I remember there was a time where, you know, he was compared with Marcus Rashford a couple of years ago. It was like Marcus Rashford versus Gabriel Jesus.
Sure.
And, you know, I was very much adamant. You know, it was very much more Marcus Rashford at that time versus Gabriel Jesus. Certainly not you know, they're not playing in the exact specific role, but profile-wise, you know, they were compared. And, you know, Gabriel Jesus is just different class. You know, I think, again, another player similar to Zinchenko, they weren't starting week in, week out.
Yeah.
They weren't, you know, the mainstay in the team like a De Bruyne. But Gabriel Jesus, again, very similar to Zinchenko. When he was called upon, he always delivered. 9 times out of 10 was always able to deliver for Pep. And, you know, he speaks so highly of him. You know, he spoke about how he's, you know, one of the best pressing forwards he has ever coached. You know, he is that much of a live wire. And I think, you know, the massive criticism that Jesus was receiving by, you know, other fans, you know, very much at Man City, he was adored. They loved him there. And, you know, outside of City, it was very much, you know, he's wasteful. He misses a lot of opportunities. And I understand that, but I look at it from a different perspective. If you're missing opportunities frequently, it means you're always getting into those positions as well.
Exactly.
And that is the difference between a good striker and a top striker. Movement. Movement is the most important trait for a striker. And I don't care, you know, you can bring, you know, quality and build-up, etc., other attributes. But for me, movement is what dictates the best strikers out there. And he is that to a T. He's, you know, I think sometimes the word elite, the word, you know, what the phrase is world-class, they sometimes are thrown out there willy-nilly. But I very much believe Gabriel Jesus' movement is borderline elite world-class. He is that good in that regard. And that's come from the coaching he's had under Pep Guardiola. I look at him at Arsenal, and obviously, if you look at the links that we've had under Mikel Arteta since he's been manager, the strikers have very much fitted a specific mold of being above 6 foot. You know, we've been linked to the likes of Tammy Abraham, linked to the likes of Victor Osimhen. You know, we've had Alexander Isak, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, obviously Dusan Vlahovic. They all fit that criteria of being above 6 foot. Now, Gabriel Jesus very much doesn't fit that aforementioned criteria of being of that stature. However, sometimes you have to go away from your ideal preference and look at the market and the opportunity. And this was an exceptional chance to get a top level player who would be able to fit into the system and is bound to blow, in my opinion. No, he's 25 years of age. You look at the money that's needed to acquire him, 45 million. You can talk about, you know, with it being his last year of his contract, but Manchester City didn't need to sell. They very much are in a very good position in that regard. And I think if we didn't get Gabriel Jesus a lot earlier and we left it a lot later, he'd be going for a lot more money given how the market has turned out to be in this window. And, you know, I think we should be very grateful that we've got this player in. You know, he is a player who, you know, when you look at a player and you just feel they're going to explode. I think this is just 100%. That. You know? And I go back to that point, you know, it's the smaller things sometimes. You know, how many times did Gabriel Jesus in a Manchester City shirt, despite the fact that he was consistent, you look at his numbers, I think he scored, you know, upwards of 90 goals for them in his time there. But how many times was he able to play 4 or 5 games in a row?
Exactly.
I don't think there would have been many situations. And I don't think momentum is talked about enough in football. A player who is given that responsibility, they know that they are the main man. They know they're going to be playing week in, week out. It's going to allow them to build that confidence to really, you know, step up. And I think that's what you're going to see with Gabriel Jesus. If he stays healthy, I would be shocked if he doesn't score 20 Premier League goals. I'm that serious. I think he's a player who, you can talk about structure, you can talk about organization, shape, as much as you like, and it's very much important in the modern game because the game has become so precise. But you need players who can create for themselves, who don't need other requirements. I think that has been the difference to other forwards that we've had. Nicolas Pepe needs certain requirements to flourish. Lacazette needs certain requirements to flourish. Aubameyang, as much as I love him, I've always loved him at Arsenal. You cannot deny the numbers that he was able to hit, despite the fact that his drop off, after he signed his contract, was significant. But he was a player who couldn't create for himself. Gabriel Jesus can do everything that Lacazette can build up. I think Lacazette, sometimes his quality in those deeper edges was overstated. Gabriel Jesus can come in, and he's done that, but he does everything a lot quicker. It's at a quicker pace. And the difference between Lacazette and the Jesus is that Jesus, he's live in the box. He's always active. You see the number of touches that he takes. You see the positions he's always occupying. And that is the difference. This is a level-raising signing. It's not only, improving us in general, but it's improving certain players like Martinelli, who was able to develop that combination, that partnership with him. And I went last season and said, I don't think people realise if you get the right striker in, how much this team is going to change. And we've seen what Jesus' impact is. And, I think we should be very much grateful. And I think a player who, you look at the first 3 games, easily, in all those games, top 3 performer, easily, every single time. And, for me, I was just a bit gutted that he didn't get that goal against Bournemouth, because obviously we know how good he is. But
Brilliant goal,
brag about, him getting this many goals. But it'll come. And I'm honestly buzzing by the signing, and I think he's going to have a huge season for us.
Yeah, the thing is, I mean, his goal against Leicester, I had a perfect view of that. Oh, it's beautiful. It's like you say, man. He's alert, work rate on the front foot. Like I said, go and look at the first goal against Bournemouth. It's so many different phases of play within a short spurt. It adds to our team tenfold. And I always have this argument with a lot of people, Rowan, right? And I bang on about it. I say, look, I would like to see Arsenal, over the last few years, buy within the Premier League. I think for people that have excelled in this league or played at a different club and are available to buy, I like to see. To me, Jesus is a perfect example of buying someone within the league and who knows the league, and is going to be beneficial to our club from an attacking point of view. And you make a good point. One thing with Martinelli. One thing I love watching Martinelli play. I love him. But one thing I want to see from him is what he's going to do goals return wise. And he almost got the goal on Saturday as well, so that would have been 3-3. But like you say, the link up play, I saw some of the intricacies of him and Martinelli. I was like, oh my god, man, this is the fluidity in the front 3. Add Saka in there, or when ESR gets into this is what I've wanted to see at the top end of the pitch for years. Yeah. And I think we're going to see it this season.
Everything's just quick with Gabriel Jesus. Every action is quick. And when every action is quick, it makes it a lot more difficult for the opposition in terms of how they set up, who they are looking to mark. It is just very much interchangeable. And that's what Mikel Arteta talks about, increasing the unpredictability in the team. And you're able to do that by having players like Gabriel Jesus, who isn't just constrained to that central position, something that Lacazette was. He very much floats towards the left-hand side. He gives you that option. He allows Martinelli to come more inside. And that versatility, that flexibility is it's not good from an opposition point of view in terms of how you deal with that. And you've seen us be able to create chances galore so far in the first 3 games, and that is what certain players are able to do. That is very much a level raiser. And I think like you say about the Premier League point, in Gabriel Jesus' situation as well, if we look at Pep Guardiola and Arteta, obviously you cannot compare the two teams in terms of a quality perspective.
Yeah.
But from a structural perspective, there are a lot of similarities. And therefore, not only is he obviously, Premier League proven, but he would have very little problems in terms of adapting because of how the setup at City is very similar to the setup at Arsenal in terms of structure.
Yeah.
And it's just those small things make a difference because you want players to be able to come in and you want them to hit the ground from the get-go. Now, obviously, you can't, say, players from other leagues aren't going to be able to come into the league and deliver straight away. But there's a lot more uncertainty there for sure. And, I think we've seen us, buy within the league, the likes of Ben White and Ramsdale, and obviously now Gabriel Jesus and Zinchenko. It has really benefited us in terms of these players being able to come into the team, not having much, adaptation period, and they've been able to hit the ground from the get-go. And, it's a very good point that you make in terms of, buying within the league when there is the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, 100%, man. No, Ryan, big up for that. Before we wrap up, I want to get your sort of score predictions. I was going to say something, but it's completely gone out of my head. Was it about strikers? No, it's gone. It's completely gone out of my head. But no, no, Ryan, big up to you. Like big up to people in the chat. Like I said, yeah. Listen, I think there's still, like I said, we've got 9-10 days left of the transfer window. Even I can't get the days right, but it'd be interesting. I do think, hand on heart, Ryan, I think we'll get one more in.
Yeah.
If we get two, I'd be very, very happy. On top of that, with obviously some more players being moved on, but I think realistically, I think we'll get one more through the door. Whether that be a winger, whether that be centrally, I think we need one. I think we need both, personally. But yeah, realistically, do you think? I mean, what's your gut feeling telling you in terms of any more coming through the door?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because Arsenal are very tight-lipped these days, you know, and it's just, you know, the Fabio Vieira signing came out of the blue, didn't it? You know,
Yeah.
and even the Zinchenko one, we were obviously linked early in the window, but it all happened very quickly once the report came out, and then it was just bang, you know, he's an Arsenal player. So I'm with you in the sense I think we'll get one in. I'm pretty certain that we'll get one more in, and it just depends on whether that is a Neto or whether that is a Tielemans. I have a feeling like if we aren't able to get that winger in, we'll absolutely go for Tielemans at the end, and you know it'll be a very easy deal to strike. I think that one, you know, Arsenal could do that whenever because you know, personal terms, I agree. The player wants to come. It's just about meeting Leicester's, you know, requirements. But Arsenal obviously hold the cards on that sense. So it would be really good if we got two. I think if we got Neto and Tielemans, I don't think you can complain about this window at all. Really, couldn't you? You look at the
Nah, bro. Listen, I don't care if you're the most negative fan in the history of Arsenal.
Yeah.
If you find something wrong with that, then I can't help you. I generally can't help you anymore.
Exactly,
But
yeah, I think it would be. Yeah, I just think it'll be one in. And you know, when I look at the business that we've done, I'd still be pretty happy with it, and especially if we can continue to remove the final, you know, section of players that we don't need who just are surplus to requirements. I think that's very important as well. You know, in terms of, you know, we talk about FFP. FFP is very much dictated by, you know, your sales and how you're able to kind of move players off the books and their wages. So, you know, I'm hoping that we're able to get the likes of Ainsley Maitland-Niles out the door. Nicolas Pepe seems to be close to that loan. So I'm looking a lot into that as well, because I just want this squad to be one which you look at it and you think, you know, the amount of players, you know, the amount of, don't want to be harsh, but dead wood, you know, have been removed. So, yeah, that's very important as well. So it's exciting, you know, Arsenal top of the league and, you know, all these links. It's a good time to be an Arsenal fan, isn't it?
I made a bold statement on Tom on Guna Talk TV channel. I said Arsenal will get more clean sheets in the Premier League than last season.
Yeah. I think
Gonna
that's
be tight.
Very good shout. I think Arsenal. I think that's one thing you can put a lot of praise on Mikel Arteta in terms of, you know, without the ball, we are a lot more sound.
A lot better. God.
I think you look at the goals that we concede, Albert, they're not coming from, you know, large distances between the midfield and the back line. It comes from individual errors. You look at the goal against the two goals we conceded against Leicester, you know, unfortunate situation for William Saliba, and now Ramsdale has to do better for the second goal. These aren't coming from, you know, I wouldn't put these down to the manager and blaming him. It is down to just players, you know, showing, you know, a little bit of inexperience and just lacking concentration in certain spells, you know, and that's very encouraging because, you know, we're going to get a lot of clean sheets. We got a lot of clean sheets last season, and you know, we'll get a lot this season as well with the additions of lots of Saliba.
Yeah, 100%. People in the chat, we have come to an end of Albert's talking points. It's been good to link up with my bro, man. Rowan, tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah, just on the handle there, you know, at RJ Arsenal Vlog on Twitter. So yeah, just you can find me there. I sometimes write as well. You know, when I get time. So yeah, if you want to follow, then that's where you can follow me.
There you have people. I've also put the link in the description for Rowan's Twitter handle and also my channel, Albert JTV. Once again, thanks to Lee Judges for this opportunity. Took it with both hands, so much thanks for that. Yes, people, I do have my own channel. So I'll pop that in the chat and also find the link in the bio. So please come and subscribe to Albert JTV. But most importantly, people, subscribe to Lee Judges TV. Most important. But yeah, Rowan, thanks again, once again, for coming on, man. And people, we'll be back at some point for Albert's talking points. So that is Lee Judges TV, people. Over and out.